the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Authentic Audio Productions, providing personalized, full-service audio solutions for you and your company, no matter how big or small. From show hosting to custom content creation, utilizing professional recording tools, Authentic Audio Pro is your one-stop shop for all of your podcasting needs. Elevate your show today and bring it to the next level with ease by visiting AuthenticAudioPro.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Monday, October 7th. Week 5 is nearly in the books. Derek Carr's Renaissance Trail continues tonight on Monday Night Football. I'm not going to sit here and bash a bunch of quarterbacks this week. I've done that the past couple of weeks. It's becoming a bit of a broken record, especially in Cleveland. We're just going to let that play out because there's nothing we can do from a contractual dollars and cents standpoint. So it is what it is until it isn't. That's the conversation there. It's kind of the one we were having with Russell Wilson last year, and look what happened. We've got the biggest dead cap hit and dead cash hit in NFL history. And by the way, Denver's good. Pittsburgh's pretty good too. So who knows? That's what we have to see. The cap is rising, and these teams are so freaking rich that decisions like this might just be part of the process. So we're getting used to it, and we're not going to overreact to it until we have to. Here's the plan for today. Because if the Mets were 2-0 in this series in Phillies, we'd be talking about nothing but the Mets and the Mets offseason. We're not going to do that. 5 NFL trade candidates, 5 NFL looming extension candidates. Let's give the people what they want. It's a big NFL show, and we're going to start with some wide receivers. Obviously, Davante Adams is going to be the story. The Raiders are Raidering. The Jets are Jetsing. That seems to be the match made in heaven. By the way, it's been that way for 2 years. Since Rodgers left Green Bay and went to this defunct Jets team that he then started to handpick some weapons to and chose Alan Lazard, by the way, of all people, and Randall Cobb. This has been discussed because, the Raiders have been up and down and left and right, and Adams obviously was happy with Derek Carr as his quarterback, and now we can kind of see why, because there's a world where Derek Carr can lift offensive weapons to the next level, even though it's not a consistent, it's not going to be at a consistent pace that puts him as one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Certainly it's enough for a player like Adams, who even at 31 years old can create separation and production, to be happy with. And that's not happening for the Las Vegas Raiders with Aiden O'Connell and or Gardner Minshew. I'm just not sure it's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers on this Jets team, because Rodgers can't stay upright and Rodgers can't move. So even though Garrett Wilson finally, 12 catches, 100-ish yards, showed the kind of impact player he can be, will he do that on a weekly basis? No. The answer is no. We already know that. The answer is no. Davante coming in would be a breath of fresh air for an organization that just continues to get knocked on its ass. Let's put it that way. So it still, to me, does make sense. Now, I spoke Thursday with Brandon that I do think the Saints should be in. And if the Saints win tonight and they smell not only their division, because Tampa Bay took a step back, but maybe even upper echelon NFC stuff, because the 49ers have now slipped. Detroit is wobbling. And that whole NFC North is just going to be a pound and ground situation for the next 2 months, right? They're going to beat each other up because they're all about the same team. Even the Bears, who now have 3 wins, and Caleb has just now started to sort of figure some things out. You can see them clicking right in front of our eyes. All 4 of those teams are going to beat the hell out of each other. There's no question. So it's setting up kind of nicely for New Orleans and Tampa Bay to kind of brush each other off a little bit. And then one of those teams could be poised with a couple of acquisitions before this deadline to really push in the NFC, especially if McCaffrey's not going to come back. And there's some rumors of that. So Davante's this big fish, and it's easy to say he's 31. He's got 2 fake years built into his contract. So he's a $12 million rental at this point, $12.2 million remaining over the next 13 weeks. It's somewhat expensive for a trade acquisition. And what do you do about his contract going forward? Are you really giving up a 2nd-round pick for a rental? I've heard all the questions. I know all the questions. This is almost 2 decades doing this stuff and monitoring these trade deadlines. These kind of players generally don't move. These are the kind of players we talk about. The hot stove is seething with because they're sexy names. They've had big years in the past. There's clear-cut relationships that could be put together, right? Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers. And then we get to November 5th and nothing, right? Deflated, junky, a couple of guys we didn't see come and get moved, but not the big fish. I just don't think that's going to be the case this time. Davante Adams is going to move. The Raiders are holding him out with some sort of injury designation because he's going to be traded, because they are taking offers, fielding phone calls, looking for the best offer, giving teams probably through this, this past weekend up until tomorrow's 4 p.m. deadline in terms of when the contracts vest to get this thing done. I would expect Davante Adams to be traded probably at or around the time you're listening to this podcast. I think it's that close. And I do think the Saints and the Chiefs have called and the Bills have called. Trust me, the Jets are in. And there's more. Pittsburgh, especially after this week, are making phone calls. Okay. I know Dallas says they're out. They've at least called. Okay. Brandon Cooks is on the IR. He's out for the next three weeks minimum. They've called. He's that kind of player. He's that kind of impact player. This is a guy that had 100 receptions at age 30. I have no idea if he's looking to extend, right? It could be positioned to give me all the teams that want me, and I'll give you my list in order. And by the way, if I go to one of these two teams, I want to talk about extension as soon as I get there. Because we can't have a Hassan Reddick situation, the guy I'm going to talk about next. But Davante is still that player at this age. So it's fascinating. It's not something we were talking about because it really does have the potential to be a Randy Moss type move. Excuse me. It's that type of level. So I'm not saying that the Jets are positioned to do that, right? Pull in one singular wide receiver and become the best team in the AFC East. Look, the defense has been underwhelming. Breece Hall has been unbelievably underwhelming. Like I said, Garrett Wilson has not been consistently a separation player. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Tyler Conklin has become Aaron Rodgers' best weapon, and that smells like some of his weirdest Green Bay years, right? The Robert Tonyan years. It's not clicking, and I don't know if that's coaching, even though this coach, right, this offensive coordinator has been with Rodgers through thick and thin. It just doesn't seem like it's clicking. Maybe dropping a player like this makes it all work, to have Lazard and Adams and Conklin, who kind of fits that tight end role that Rodgers has loved for a long time. Maybe that's the piece. So I'm not going to say it can't work and can't completely transform an offense, but Rodgers is hurt. The offensive line has been shoddy at best. And I do think New Orleans is set up better to pull in a player like this. Like I said, $12.2 million remaining as of this week now, 13 weeks left in the season out of the 18 total weeks. And it's a lot. It's not something that the teams I'm talking about can just easily take on, even if you see that their cap space says so, because you got to remember there's injuries, there's practice squad promotions. There's a lot that goes into an NFL season, and we're only one quarter of the way through here. So there's a hell of a lot more money to get to in terms of how the day-to-day stuff works and processes. New Orleans, by the way, only about $4.5 million of space as we sit here right now. So are they processing more salary conversions, something they do in drones throughout the year? Well, that might mean an extension for Alvin Kamara, who has the highest base salary on this team right now. Okay. And that's probably perfectly within rights. It's something he's asked for in the offseason. They have certainly been negotiating, at least to some degree. They probably stopped in season, but maybe that's ramped up. Okay. If the discussion of getting Davante in, and maybe the Raiders only want to retain half of that salary, right? So we'll pay $6 million. You pay the remaining $6 million. You're going to have to convert that into signing bonus on the fly for cap purposes, fine. But it could also be we're going to extend Alvin Kamara 2 years, lower his current cap hit, free up some space to acquire Davante Adams, and now look at us. Because Derek Carr is locked in next year, at least per a guaranteed roster bonus and things like that. And the dead cap has piled up because of a couple of cap conversions. So he's the guy in 2025. So to sit here and say that Kamara shouldn't be here for 2025, to me is silly. You're going to rip up his fake year and probably tack on 2 for cap purposes. And the same could be true about Davante Adams. Okay, let's not just bring him in as a rental. Let's bring him in, put him into something similar to the Kamara contract, some sort of 2-year extension. And now it's Carr, Kamara, and Devontae, all older players. I get it, but some semblance of a core to go with a bunch of young talent that has worked. Clearly, this Saints team, from a projection standpoint, from a roster construction standpoint, should not be working, but they are. They are hitting lightning in a bunch of areas. And they're deficient as well in a couple of areas. But from a year-to-year standpoint, this team seems like a team that can continue to band-aid some things. And if they continue to hit the draft, having this kind of core in Kamara and Devontae and Olave and Juwan Johnson and Carr, there's worse out there. Let's put it that way. So just for a lot of reasons, this makes sense to me. But just know that either Las Vegas is retaining all the remaining salary outside of the minimum, or there's going to be a yin and a yang. New Orleans is going to have to do something to acquire Devontae Adams. And the same would go for Buffalo, and the same would go for Kansas City. The Jets could make it work flush. A couple of other teams. Baltimore has been discussed a little bit here. That's a team that probably has to yin and yang a little bit. Even if you see they have ample cap space, bit of a yin and yang. They're down there with the middle of the pack type teams in terms of cap space. So you don't want to deal with a situation where you have to get too fancy to get a player like this. But look, Baltimore just tripped over themselves a little bit. They had a chance to really take a commanding position, and Cincinnati almost got them in the end. So it's understandable that some of these teams feel like they have to continue to push and push and push, and not every franchise is going to do that. But this is one of those players, and I'll spend the most time on for sure, that they just don't come up too often. And you throw age out and you kind of throw the contract stuff out a little bit, and you just say, let's do what it takes today, and we'll figure it out tomorrow. Hassan Reddick missed another one, another $792,000 lost. There's really nothing else to say about this. Okay. He's got to come back by week 10 to at least instantiate himself as an NFL player this year. Otherwise, we're going to be at a point where he can't play football this year, and the contract is going to toll if he misses the whole season. What does that mean? It means the salary that he holds, the 14.25, instead of him forfeiting the money, now just becomes a 2025 salary. The Jets still have full rights on him. Everything from, outside of the workout bonus he didn't make will toll to 2025. And when the Jets don't give him a contract this offseason, it's just going to look like this. He'll be on the books for nothing from a cap perspective. Nothing. And he'll continue to lose, again, this $780,000 a week, $792,000 a week, if he stays away and just tortures his career. And this is the situation that Le'Veon Bell went through, Trent Williams in Washington for a while. Both those players had at least some sort of end game that got them, obviously, contracts. Trent Williams much, much, much better than Le'Veon at the end, but it's just not a stance that works, especially when he's not set to earn peanuts, right? This was a pretty fair game. He's not worried. He wasn't worried so much about this year's cash. He wants cash next year. He wants cash in 2026 because he is 30 going on 31. And there's a line of demarcation in his career. So it hasn't worked. He has to be considered for a trade. Has to be. Obviously, the Jets aren't going to give him what he wants. They're not even discussing it from all we've heard. There has to be a team out there that needs, wants, and is willing to overpay for a player that has 11 sacks last year, 16 sacks the year prior, and really close to 50 over the past 4. That's what we were dealing with here. This is a sack machine. Okay, and there are teams out there right now that cannot get to the quarterback. Good teams. Teams that want to be deep into the postseason. I wouldn't be surprised if he moves. I wouldn't be surprised if every other GM and front office in the league looks at this situation and says, why wouldn't it be us next? Okay, if we're going to acquire this player, even if it's for a 6th round pick, half of what the Jets had to give up. Who's to say that the player shows up and without a new contract doesn't play a snap for that new team as well? So there's there's certainly a world where he is completely off the market here because of the stance that he's taking, and the Jets are willing to just ride this thing out and not discuss it until they're asked about it, kind of thing. But don't be surprised. Here's what's remaining. All right. So that $14.25 million salary, that's the base salary. That's what cancels. That's what comes over. There's no dead cap involved. We're about $10.3 million left for the next 13 weeks. It's a lot. All right. It's a lot. And it's not enough. Right. Because with it is going to be some sort of extension. You're going to take that, turn it into a signing bonus probably, and bump out 2 years with at least this and next year fully guaranteed, obviously. That's the requirement, clearly, to take Hassan Reddick on for the 2024 season. I just don't know that there's going to be somebody out there willing to do that, but it only takes one. It only takes one. Amari Cooper, I keep hearing all the right things, right? The Browns don't want to move on this guy. They've given him his signing bonus for cap purposes. So why would they move off of this guy? The word out of Cleveland continues to be, we're all good. Don't worry about us. And yet they're 1-4. And they probably won't change quarterbacks. The coach has been pretty clear about that. Not that I think it would make a difference. Amari's been all right. Okay. Bunch of drops early on. There's some deadly drops that could have converted to wins here. But he is showing that he can be at least the WR2 out there. And at a league minimum, which is what he costs right now because of the cap conversion, we're talking about a player who is worth $873,000 right now for the rest of the season. And he'll be a UFA after that. That's what it is. 30-year-old Amari Cooper at $873,000. I have to imagine that teams are making this phone call right now, if they haven't already. This is a player that should be moved. This is a team that should start to rip the parts apart. And you can tell me it's not Deshaun's fault. It's not the coach's fault. There's just too many injuries. That's correct. That's also a reason to not try to push the envelope too far on any given season, okay? It's early. The Browns could rip off 4 straight wins and completely change everything about how we speak about them and look about them and think about them. And that's what a lot of these macho front offices try to do, is just say, we're good. We're putting our foot in the sand. This thing's going to turn around because we believe in our process. And I get it. That's all the right things to be saying. We've got 3 weeks left until this trade deadline. That's all I'm saying as well. And this is the best value that will exist on the trade block. This is it right here. This is what teams are looking for. A plug and play guy. Depth. We've had injuries at tons of positions. We just need somebody who can catch the ball every now and then. And he's dirt cheap. The Browns are sitting on a good draft pick here because of the signing bonus they paid out in August. If they may not be ready today to make that move, but if next week looks like it did this week on the field, at some point, even if it's primarily injury related, as they keep saying it is, you have to pull this trigger. It's just too good of a value not to get a draft pick for a pending free agent that I don't think have any intent on extending after Jerry Jeudy and whatever and Njoku contracts. You got to pull the trigger on this one. So expect the teams who we've been talking about. The problem is, right? Baltimore, if they miss on Devontae, this is a target. Buffalo, if they miss on Devontae, this is a target. Kansas City, this is a target. These are all AFC teams. I don't know if Cleveland's going to do that. And I know that sounds like the oldest, most antiquated thing to say, but it doesn't happen often. Now, they've traded with the Jets before. They've traded with Buffalo before. Okay, one of the offensive linemen they're missing from Buffalo. So the further we get into the season and the further away from the wild card they get, which is really why you care about AFC teams or even divisional teams at some point, the less that will matter. So do I think this is going to be a quick trade? No. Like I said, I believe them when they say this guy's not on the block right now, because I believe that they think they can turn this around, because they have to think that, because their quarterback's fully guaranteed. They have to. In 2.5 to 3 weeks, let's put it that way, this will be the guy. This will be the guy. And by the way, it may force Devontae Adams' market to pause a little bit. It shouldn't, because Devontae is a level and a half above Amari Cooper, but not when it comes to value. All right. Devontae at 12.2, Amari 873,000. That swings a lot of momentum in terms of what teams are looking for right now, at least for the rest of the season. Budda Baker's on my trade list. Safety, Arizona. Arizona's playing well. A defense. Look, they're 2 off seasons away from getting that defense right, but they have started to figure out some Kyler Murray stuff, which is exciting because this is a contract that's not going away as well. You want things to work out for teams, and certainly adding Marvin Harrison. The James Conner stuff has been great for a bunch of years now, and it looks like it's going to continue through 2024 for the most part. This was supposed to be a down week, and he really turned things around himself against one of the best defenses in all of football in San Francisco. It's a big win for them. And I don't think they're sellers right now, but this is a expiring contract. There's about $10 million left, $7 million at the deadline in 3.5 weeks. So there's something to be said. If the next couple of weeks don't go exactly as planned and they're kind of fringe wild card contenders, they could also just extend him. Okay. He has been good for them. There has been long-term discussions about keeping Budda Baker. If you're out there exploring a trade for him as an expiring rental and it's a 6th round pick at best because of the cash, and it's, do we eat more cash? Because they've done that quite a bit in the past. Do we eat more cash to up that to a 4th? Maybe. How about we just pay this guy? All right. Because the safety market is flatlined. All right. There's value to be had in a 29-year-old safety, which is what he'll be next March on the free agent market. There's value to be had. Like we're talking 3 for 21 in some instances. Not necessarily for this player, but he has just finished out a big contract, almost $63 million over the past 5 seasons. He's not getting that kind of contract again. Safeties aren't getting that kind of contract in general. And, Winfield obviously is the unicorn right now. He's 4 years younger on a team that has a much better financial structure around them. We'll see. I think I would vote for keep and extend versus trade for peanuts just to get something back before he walks away. And obviously Bryce Young is the 5th player here on the trade discussions. Why now? Why not wait? There's a couple of reasons. Andy Dalton's not taking this team to the postseason. I'm not worried about that, okay? It really has nothing to do with what this team does for the next 12 weeks or so. You don't want this to sit in oil for too long. All right? It's an ugly situation. The way this was handled, the immediacy of it, how good Dalton looked for a week or two immediately after the Bryce Young benching. Nobody's bringing in Bryce Young for the next 12 weeks to try to fix their team. Even a team that loses their quarterback to a full season injury. That's not who this player is. This player is behind the 8 ball, behind in his development, behind in his reads, and small in stature. So there's really no advantage for Bryce Young. There's no situation that he can walk into and just become immediately better. It needs to be a ramp-up situation. And Carolina is not that team, clearly. All right, because Zach Wilson's slinging darts in Minnesota right now, and Baker Mayfield slinging darts in Tampa Bay, both former Carolina Panthers project quarterbacks. However, getting him into a system now, knowing there's going to be an opportunity for him to compete all next offseason, all right, whether that's Danny Dimes and the Giants, whether that's anybody in Las Vegas, whether that's Will Levis in Tennessee, getting him into the picture is at least worthy of saying, here's the offense we run. Okay. Here's how we do things here. Here's how Malik Neighbors or DeAndre Hopkins or whatever we're joining here. Here's what they look like. Here's how they run their routes. He's not getting reps. That's not what the next 12 weeks of practice is for him. But getting the mental part of it and a change of scenery part of it up to speed a little bit, that's worthy. So if you're a franchise that knows next March there's going to be at least some cloud cover around your quarterback situation. This is the kind of trade you make. You bring him in right now, and you get him in the organization right now, and you let the coaches at least start to communicate with this player, and you put him on the proper development path to at least start competing for a starting job. And if he's not, then he's really not that expensive as a backup either, because it's 4.2 next year and 5.9 in 2026. Okay? He becomes Trey Lance, which sounds terrible, but if you're not going to be a starting quarterback, being a serviceable backup quarterback is better than nothing. And by the way, pretty damn financially responsible right now. Okay, we're going to have backups making 30 to 40 million easily throughout their careers based on where the cap and the salaries are going. So there's 5 trade candidates at least right now, but we're still 3.5 weeks away. Let's see where we get to. Okay, quickly. This piece is going up on Spot Track in minutes. I just finished it. It's smoldering hot still. 5 future extension candidates. Okay, so these are players that actually can't be extended yet. Right? These are all pending extension eligible players after 2024. So they're young and they're talented. And for the most part, they've been heading in this direction for a while. I'd say with the exception of the latter. And the latter may surprise some people, but we'll get to it. Number one's obviously Brock Purdy. And I got to eat some crow here. This is a whole situation that I've gone on radio shows, even in San Francisco. And I've said, this might be it. This might be the shiny object that I've been looking for as a cap analyst, because the front office, the coaching staff, the offensive scheme, the weapons and the way those weapons are utilized, the structure of the offensive line, this could be the situation where you could drop any serviceable quarterback into it and make it work. So why would you pay any of those serviceable quarterbacks with any kind of massive guarantee, right? This is a team, this is an organization, this is an offense that made Jimmy Garoppolo look like a worthy starting quarterback as he eyed the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo is not even the second quarterback on the Rams right now. And he's not even an option for any team that's needed a quarterback. And if he were, he'd be the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins right now. Without question, hands down. But he's not. Okay? And yet, when he was a 49er, he looked, smelled, and felt above average in every regard. And he's not. Well, Brock Purdy can shed all of that now. Because what he's done for 5 weeks, and I realize the record in the standings is not what San Francisco had in mind. And Brock Purdy is not translating what he's doing into necessarily big wins. And that's a factor, right? There's a factor there. But he has done much more as an individual player than I ever thought he could. He's put the offense on his back at times. He has made plays. He has created plays. It is not just Brock Purdy doing what he's being told and hitting the right target at the right time, something he's very, very good at. He has expanded his game. He is becoming a fully fledged starting quarterback in this league, and he's about to cash in. All right, so I'll eat crow. I thought we were headed toward that direction, but the McCaffrey injury and the Kittle stuff and the Debo stuff, all of it has now led to Purdy expanding his role, expanding his resume as a starting quarterback. And there's no other way to say it, but he is legitimate. He is a legitimate top or near the top tier quarterback in this league. And that's what the money's going to look like. So what does that mean? Okay. Am I going to sit here and say that even if the math says one thing, this guy's got to go north of Dak Prescott? You want to make the argument with wins and standings and playoff. I get it. Okay. Brock Purdy has been at the level in terms of team production that Dak Prescott has. Maybe even to a better degree. But the math doesn't get us there. Where does the math get us? Pretty damn close. $55.5 million. All right, which is above Burrow, above Lawrence, above Love, and certainly behind Dak Prescott's $60 million. That's what the math says. That's it. No logic, no further analyzing. Okay. So he passes the smell test, the eye test, and the math test to be one of the top paid quarterbacks in all of football and in the history of football. And if that's what the math says, what happens if over the next 10 to 12 weeks, he takes this 49ers team to the top of the NFC with a week 1 bye, and he sneaks himself to another NFC championship game? There's really not going to be any other conversation, because that probably means he's bypassed Dak a couple of times throughout this season. Again, by the way, I'm just getting you ready for it. Okay. There's a very clear path for Brock Purdy now to put this team on his back, overcome some significant injuries around him, and Joe Flacco himself, from Mr. Irrelevant to the highest paid player in the history of football. The math doesn't say it yet, but the math won't have a chance to become a factor if he does this yet again with this organization in 2024. Drake London is next. All of these Falcons weapons were just completely falling out of favor until this year. And this is exactly what we thought was going to happen. Okay. You got a functioning quarterback, even if he's coming off the injury and he's up there in age, you got a functioning quarterback who can, at least from a regular season standpoint, turn it up, make some plays, create some offense. And all of a sudden, Drake London has a real chance to be right up there in the conversation of highest paid, highest regarded wide receivers in football. That's exactly what they drafted him to be. Look, the production's been good with Desmond Ridder and a retired Matt Ryan, basically. The numbers have been solid, so it's not like the resume doesn't have any kind of padding on it. It's well statured right now. But if he continues, and if he and Cousins continue with this decently, it looks like the chemistry is strong, this should be the year that we turn around and say, all right, this is why they got him. This is why they have to keep him. And I'm saying that fully aware that Cousins may be here for 2024 and 2025, and then this is Penix's team. But even more reason to have Drake London under contract, locked in after year 3. You pump this thing out through 2029 or 30 in terms of full terms, and you have this guy to take the leap from Cousins to Penix without question. So I would expect London to be in the extension conversation in February. And right now, because like I said, it's been above average, but not yet elite status, he's at a 4 for 90 clip. All right. So that's, mid-20s, mid to low 20s. Whereas our upper echelons are in 35 and 34 and change. And Jamar Chase is certainly on pace to be in that conversation as well. So all they can do right now, because I think he's done enough to at least talk extension, get the negotiation started. But if he has the breakout year over the next 12 weeks, he gets himself into that 30 mark, right? The Amon-Ra St. Brown discussion, that kind of thing. So he can add millions of dollars to this conversation if he and Cousins stay on the same page. Let's go to the offensive line. Trey Smith, the right guard for the Kansas City Chiefs. This guy's been on my radar for a couple of years now. 6th round pick back in 2021, man. The Chiefs just need stuff like this to happen. Any contending team needs this to happen, right? A potentially difficult and expensive position to replace in free agency, and you just nail a 6th round pick as a starter. That's what this is. Now, it's coming to Crow, okay? And all the value that they've squeezed out of this is eventually going to have to get turned into some kind of big payday. And here's what it looks like right now. And I'll tell you why I'm hesitant on it. This is it. He's in a walk year. He got his performance bonus, so he's making $3.5 million close to this year. So something probably needs to get done, because you're not going to franchise tag a right guard. The math alone says 4 for 72. That's big money for a right guard. But left guard Joe Thuney, getting a little up there in age, will be entering a contract year in 2025. You're going to keep and extend him? You're going to let him play it out for one more year? Or you're going to punt on Thuney, pay Trey Smith, and flip him over to the left side? That seems like where things could be headed. And it's nothing against Thuney. It's just kind of the way we see teams operate here. And if that's the case, 4 for 72 might not be enough. You flip a guy over to the blind side, there's just more money that comes with that. We saw that with Orlando Brown. We saw that with a bunch of players. I would expect if that conversation starts to be happening, or even if that happens mid-season here, that the math simply won't hold up. That they'll have to be math plus a higher ceiling because of where Trey Smith's future could be going. But it's a great story, and this is one of maybe 4 Chiefs that are going to be up for extensions this offseason, Trent McDuffie being one of them, the cornerback. But it doesn't get any easier to remain a contender in this league. Let's put it that way. It's hard work and a hell of a lot of money every single offseason. Don't tell Dallas. Aiden Hutchinson, the edge rusher for the Lions, one of the hometown kids. It was a bit of an eye-popping draft, even though he was a monster from Michigan. And my God, has he been as advertised. Here's his first 38 games. 119 tackles, 29 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions. He has 4 interceptions as an edge rusher. Okay. It's insane. It's just insane. It's just unbelievable awareness, unbelievable anticipation. He is everything they want him to be and then some. They're going to be driving Brinks trucks to his driveway and just letting him pick out money from the back. Okay. That's what they're going to do, because this is the kind of player that is when you build him into a contending team, and they've got so many options offensively, and Jared Goff is now here for 4 more years. This is the kind of player you just want to say, take your money, go do your thing, and we'll talk to you when you're winning awards, because this guy's going to win awards. That's the type of level of player this is. And Detroit's not going to give up on this. Let's put it that way. So he's extension eligible this winter. Just the math. It's not going to be hard. I just gave you the numbers. Just the math alone says 4 for 127, almost $32 million a year. Well, that's just behind Bosa, just behind Justin Jefferson at $34-35 million. That's where the non-quarterback money sits right now. If he continues on this path, and by the way, he is, okay, the 2024 has been just as good as any other season. All he has to do is continue to be Aiden Hutchinson, and he should have zero trouble becoming the highest non-paid quarterback in the history of football. That's what's about to happen with Aiden Hutchinson over the next few months. Last one I told you might be a little bit eye-popping, a little bit controversial. It's a bit of a hometown situation for me, and it's time for this kid to get his due. Even if, financially speaking, it may not rise to the level that the math says it should. It's Christian Benford, the right cornerback for the Buffalo Bills. You've seen him. You've seen him on primetime, because the Bills apparently only play games in primetime. Monday Night Football next week against Aaron Rodgers to bring a bunch of these conversations together. You're probably going to see him on Garrett Wilson. Okay. Maybe Mike Williams at times, but hell, maybe Devontae Adams. He has been well above average now for the better part of 2 seasons. It started last year. It peaked last year and is now continued in 2024. It's not just interceptions and anticipation. The catch rate's insane. It's like 52.5%. All the numbers that you want to be good for Christian Benford are good for Christian Benford. He's a 6th round pick. And I'm going to sit here and tell you that it's BS what I'm about to say, but it's just the way crap works in this money. Right now, analytically speaking, he is above Sauce Gardner, above Trent McDuffie, and right with Derek Stingley Jr. That's the crop of cornerbacks who should all reset the market, if not this offseason, within the next 18 months. Christian Benford has the highest mathematical valuation of all these players. $24.5 million a year would make him the highest paid cornerback in the history of football. I can tell you right now, he's not getting this contract. Not from the Bills and not from any other team. He's just not. Why? Because this sentence will be said every single time he sits down for a negotiation. Well, there's got to be a reason you were valued as a 6th round pick 3 years ago. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Whereas Sauce, McDuffie, and Stingley, highly drafted players, came with all these tools, and this massive ceiling, they will get the benefit of the doubt. They have earned that because of their play in college, because of their draft profiles and their draft selection. And Benford just doesn't have that. And it sucks. And for every Brock Purdy situation that I just went through, this is the norm. The norm is that the Christian Benfords of the world get suppressed. So if I tell you he's sitting here on a 4 for near 100, and it ends up that he signs an extension of 4 for $75, it's not going to surprise me one bit. And I hope it doesn't surprise you either. And it's not going to take away from the fact that this is a hell of a player. And this is a player that over the course of the next few weeks in these primetime games that Buffalo has been scheduled will be an impact player. He will make plays because he has done it now for the better part of 2 seasons. And it's just who he is. If he gets the 4 for 100, by the way, you shouldn't gawk at that either. Now you know. All right. We'll sling in some baseball stuff on Thursday with Brandon. And certainly we got to get to some basketball stuff with Keith again because the preseason has started. The cat era in Newark has kicked off. We want to continue to monitor that as much as possible. And the change in Minnesota as well. With two potential, 2 or 3 seeds in their respective conferences make a massive change at the final hour. It's about as good as it gets for the NBA. So plenty to get to, plenty to follow on SpotDraft.com. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the SpotDraft Podcast.